Remember the days when the Super Bowl was all about bell-bottoms, disco music, and wild inventive party foods? Well, today we're counting down 15 1970 Super Bowl party foods that once reigned supreme but have mostly disappeared from modern gatherings. Let's relish in these blasts from the past and see how our party tables have changed over time. Now let's dig in, beginning at number 15. Number 15, cheese fondue. Cheese fondue might conjure images of cozy alpine lodges, but in the 70s, it was also a star attraction at countless American Super Bowl parties. Originating in Switzerland, fondue became a trendy sensation in the U.S., with partygoers huddling around brightly colored fondue pots. Now, typically, you melt a blend of Swiss cheeses like Gruyere or Emmental, which are sometimes with a dash of white wine or Kirsch for extra flavor. Long stem forks emerged to skewer chunks of bread, veggies, and occasionally apples or pears. It was equal parts communal and playful, a hands-on food experience that felt downright elegant back then. In many households, cheese fondue sets were wedding or housewarming gifts, neatly packaged with instructions on how to achieve that silky dip-worthy consistency. Technical tips recommended stirring the cheese in a figure-8 pattern to reduce lumps and using cornstarch as a stabilizer. But despite the guidelines, the fondue pot was notorious for scorched cheese at the bottom if one got distracted, especially during an exciting football play. By the late 1970s, the novelty began wearing off as new finger foods and dips took center stage. But for a time, few party experiences felt more stylish than crowding around a fondue pot, and then just swapping banter with friends and battling for that perfectly coated bread cube. Number 14, Jell-O molds. Vibrant, wiggly, and sometimes studded with fruit, Jell-O molds were once the pinnacle of Super Bowl party creativity. A large ring mold or bundt pan often served as a centerpiece, filled with layers of sweet neon-colored gelatin. Green, orange, or cherry Jell-O was a common base, and it wasn't unusual to see fruit cocktail, mandarin oranges, or even crushed pineapple suspended within. For a gourmet twist, some hosts whipped in marshmallows, cottage cheese, or even mayonnaise, a peculiar combination by today's standards. Though Jell-O has been around for decades, the 1970s took gelatin-based dishes to a whole new level. You'd see elaborate, multi-layered creations that showcased carefully poured layers of different flavors and colors. Technical instructions recommended letting each stratum set fully before adding the next. Often, an entire day of patience was required to ensure the layers looked and tasted just right. Another tip was to dip the mold briefly in warm water for a clean release, an important step to avoid lumps or tears along the edges. Despite the visual flair, tastes gradually shifted toward creamier dips and heartier bites. By the 80s, a once prized Jell-O mold began to feel old-fashioned. Even so, these shimmering, gravity-defying concoctions remained a fascinating relic of an era when no Super Bowl table felt complete without a wobbly gelatin ring. Hey, before we move on to number 13 on the list, I want to ask you a small favor. If you're enjoying this content so far, take a second to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the video without subscribing. Imagine what we could accomplish if everyone subscribed, or even half. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. Thank you to all that do. Number 13, cocktail wieners in grape jelly. Small, snappy, and somewhat mysterious in that sauce, cocktail weenies simmered in grape jelly and chili sauce were a classic 1970s crowd pleaser. They're also sometimes known as grape jelly meatballs, but the wiener version was particularly beloved for Super Bowl parties. Hosts would whip out a slow cooker, dump a jar of grape jelly in, add some chili sauce, sometimes spiked with maybe a mustard or Worcestershire sauce, and let those little sausages bathe in that sweet and tangy mixture until kickoff. Surprisingly, the odd pairing worked. The sugars in the jelly caramelized just slightly, blending with the tang from the chili sauce to create a unique sweet and sour flavor. Those who love data might cite the perfect ratio of sugar to acidity in the sauce, ensuring that the wieners stayed tender and coated in a sticky glaze. The slow cooker was the real MVP here. It kept everything warm for hours, making it easy for guests to pop by and scoop out a couple of wieners during a commercial break. However, as new dips and more exotic flavor profiles emerged in the 80s and 90s, more people gradually left behind the idea of mixing grape jelly and sausage. Although some modern cooks still rely on the crockpot magic of grape jelly and chili sauce for a nostalgic gathering, the phenomenon no longer dominates the Super Bowl menu quite like it did back in those groovy 70s. Number 12, the Devil Ham Dip. In the 1970s saw a boom in convenience products, and Devil Ham spread was among the most popular. Underwood deviled ham, in its iconic paper-wrapped can, found its way into countless just-mix-and-serve recipes. At a Super Bowl party, one staple was deviled ham dip, a quick combination of deviled ham, cream cheese, a dash of Worcestershire sauce, and sometimes diced onions or peppers for a hint of crunch. The result was a savory, spreadable dip that paired well with crackers or raw veggies. The technique involved softening the cream cheese for easier blending and carefully folding in the deviled ham to maintain a creamy texture. Some hosts did spice it up with a few drops of Tabasco, creating a mild kick that broke up the richness. Hints of smoked paprika or celery salt could also be tossed in, presenting a flavor profile that felt surprisingly upscale for such a budget-friendly ingredient. But as charcuterie boards and more refined cheese spreads became fashionable, deviled ham-based dips began receding into the shadows. Few 21st century football parties featured the pinkish semi-processed concoction. Even so, those who grew up in the 1970s might recall it fondly as an efficient and downright tasty solution for feeding a roomful of rowdy fans. Number 11, the cheese ball, coated in nuts. Of course. One of the most iconic 1970s party foods, the oversized cheese ball. It was typically covered in chopped nuts, and it epitomized the convenience and flair of the 1970s. Often shaped into a perfect sphere, it combined softened cream cheese, shredded cheddar, maybe a dash of garlic powder, and a hint of onion seasoning. Then the entire ball would be carefully rolled in chopped pecans or walnuts, and it created an attractive, crunchy exterior. Arranged on a platter with various crackers, it was a guaranteed conversation starter. Some folks got creative and introduced dried herbs or even pineapple tidbits for a sweet and savory twist. The cheese ball's main selling point was that it could be prepared days in advance. Pop it in the fridge and let the flavors mingle, and it'd be good to go by game time. Technical details often advised chilling the mixture thoroughly before shaping it, which helped maintain the structural integrity, especially if the living room got a little toasty with that TV on full blast. Yet, as new dips, including spinach artichoke and hummus variations, became more popular in subsequent decades, the cheese ball, well, it started to look like a relic from the disco era. Still, if you're a nostalgic host, busting out a throwback cheese ball might earn you an extra wave of appreciation from the guests who remember it from their childhood or early teenage years. Number 10, Oysters Rockefeller. A surprise guest at certain 1970 Super Bowl parties, Oysters Rockefeller added a luxurious, if somewhat unexpected, touch to game day spreads. Originally created at Antoine's in New Orleans in the late 19th century, this dish soared to fame with its rich blend of butter, spinach, herbs, and breadcrumbs baked atop fresh oysters on the half shell. The Rockefeller name hinted at the recipe's decadent nature, evoking the wealth of the famously affluent family. In the context of the 70s, hosts who prided themselves on sophistication, they might prepare Oysters Rockefeller to impress their guests. Technical guidelines suggested that maintaining the proper temperature of the oysters was key. A quick blast under the broiler was just enough to melt the buttery topping without overcooking the delicate shellfish. Some cooks added a splash of Pernod or absinthe to the spinach mixture, which introduced a subtle licorice note. Others stuck to the classic approach: plenty of parsley, a hint of shallots, and a sprinkling of Parmesan cheese. While certainly not as ubiquitous as cheese fondue or cocktail wieners, Oysters Rockefeller symbolized a more refined side of the decade's entertaining style. By the 1980s, the shift toward casual fare meant that those fancy bivalves lost ground to finger foods that required less fuss. Even so, for those who wanted something special amid the TV trays and beanbag chairs, a platter of bubbling Oysters Rockefeller could dazzle fans who were willing to step outside of the usual snacking routine. Number 9, Watergate Salad. Bright, green, fluffy, and sweet, Watergate salad was a quintessential 1970s creation. Despite the name, which references a big political scandal from the decade, the dessert salad had its own claim to fame. It typically combined pistachio instant pudding mix, canned crushed pineapple, miniature marshmallows, and whipped topping, like Cool Whip, creating a mint green cloud of sugary goodness. Some folks even added chopped pecans for an extra crunch. General Foods introduced pistachio pudding mix around the early 70s, and rumor has it that the association with the Watergate name grew from either a press joke or a creative marketing attempt. Regardless, the distinctive color and whimsical composition made it a popular conversation piece at potlucks and at parties, including those for the big game. Technical tips recommended draining the pineapple thoroughly to keep the salad from becoming too runny. Beyond that, it was a breeze to make. Just dump and stir. Over time, dessert salads fell out of favor, and Watergate salad is now mostly relegated to memory, though some families keep the tradition alive at family reunions. For many, just seeing that pastel green treat at a party table brings back a wave of nostalgia, recalling an era when sweet salads were a totally acceptable dish. Number 8, olive loaf sandwiches. Olive loaf, essentially bologna with pimento-stuffed green olives embedded in it, stood out as a deli counter curiosity. In the 70s, that curiosity found a home at a lot of Super Bowl parties, often in the form of mini sandwiches. Sliced olive loaf, sometimes paired with American cheese and a slather of mustard or Miracle Whip, was often layered between soft white bread or small dinner rolls maybe. The briny punch of olives gave the otherwise mild bologna-like meat a bit of an edge, making it a conversation piece for an adventurous snacker. Despite its mid-century popularity, olive loaf was never truly mainstream. It was overshadowed by smoked turkey, roast beef, or ham, which soared in popularity in the 80s and beyond. Some fans loved the tangy flavor and said that it balanced out the fatty texture of the loaf. Others found the look a bit unappealing, with bright green circles peppered throughout. Nah, no thanks. Still, these sandwiches were portable, easy to make, and crucially, made use of ingredients that were readily found at local supermarkets. The sandwich-making process itself was pretty simple. A quick smear, a couple slices, and a neat press down. No fuss. As sandwiches evolved into more artisanal, health-conscious builds, the good old olive loaf struggled to keep up. For those who recall sneaking an extra mini sandwich at halftime, though, its memory remains a nostalgic highlight of the 1970s game day fare. Number 7. Ambrosia salad. Yet another dish that towed the line between sweet and dessert. Ambrosia salad had deep roots in Southern cooking, but reached nationwide popularity in the 70s. Traditionally, it contained mandarin oranges, pineapple chunks, shredded coconut, and miniature marshmallows all bound together with a whipped topping, sometimes sweet and sour cream or yogurt. The pastel-hued medley often ended up on the table at barbecues, potlucks, and, of course, a Super Bowl party. That sweet tropical flavor offered a welcome break from the heavier, meaty snacks. Its name comes from Greek mythology, where ambrosia was the food of the gods. Some versions included maraschino cherries for a pop of color, while others introduced chopped nuts for a crunch. A dash of vanilla extract or a sprinkle of nutmeg could elevate the overall taste. Technique-wise, you typically chill the mix overnight, letting flavors mingle and the marshmallows soften to a spongy texture. Kids back then approached ambrosia salad like a dessert option, scooping multiple servings onto their plates. As Americans gradually turned away from those sugary side dishes, especially in savory settings, ambrosia's star began to fade. Nevertheless, for many who grew up in the 1970s, the sight of fluffy fruit salads remained synonymous with family gatherings and easy entertaining, if a bit out of place next to buffalo wings in the modern era. Number 6. Pineapple upside-down cake. One of my favorites. Originally popularized earlier in the 20th century by the Dole Pineapple Company, pineapple upside-down cake experienced a renaissance in the 1970s, often popping up at Super Bowl parties alongside a savory snack. Home bakers loved the cake's wow factor, a golden ring of pineapple slices, each crowned with a red maraschino cherry, glistening atop a sweet caramelized glaze. Once inverted from the pan, the cake revealed that picture-perfect top layer, an Instagram-worthy moment decades before social media ever existed. The standard recipe involved melting butter and brown sugar in a cast-iron skillet or a round cake pan, arranging pineapple rings in an appealing pattern, and then pouring a simple vanilla cake batter over the fruit. And during baking, the sugar-butter mixture caramelized, fusing the pineapple to the cake's surface. A quick flip after baking was crucial, although a bit nerve-wracking. If done correctly, you'd achieve a beautiful mosaic of fruit. Many household tip sheets recommended placing a heat-proof plate over the pan and flipping confidently to avoid a messy accident. While undeniably delicious, pineapple upside-down cake gradually fell out of favor in game day rotations, replaced by an easier finger food or dip. Today, it's more often seen at nostalgic bake sales or retro-themed diners, or maybe my kitchen. Now, yet one taste can instantly transport any middle-aged American, back to a living room decked out in a shag carpet with a big game flickering on a tube TV. Number 5. The 7-layer salad. 7-layer salad was a layered masterpiece that frequently appeared at gatherings throughout the 1970s, football festivities included. Typically assembled in a clear glass bowl for visual impact, it featured tiers of iceberg lettuce, diced tomatoes, peas, yes, peas, chopped hard-boiled egg, shredded cheddar cheese, cooked bacon, and a thick layer of mayonnaise-based dressing on top. A sprinkling of fresh herbs or green onions sealed the deal, sometimes accompanied by a dusting of paprika. The beauty of this dish lay in the assembly. You can carefully create each layer to ensure a colorful, eye-catching presentation. Peas provided a sweet pop, while bacon lent smoky savoriness. Technical instructions emphasized not mixing the layers. The dressing was meant to trickle down slowly, blending flavors as it sat in the fridge. Event hosts appreciated that you could prepare the salad a day ahead, which made it a champion for convenience for big parties like the big game. As tossed salads and more contemporary flavors gained traction in the 80s and 90s, the dense mayonnaise topping and reliance on iceberg lettuce came to be seen as passé. Nonetheless, Those who remember devouring a hearty scoop between commercial breaks, they can't help but grin at the memory of that improbable combination of lettuce, bacon, peas, and that creamy dressing layered like a geological strata. Number 4, pineapple and ham skewers. Drawing on the tiki craze from the 60s, pineapple and ham skewers, sometimes called Hawaiian kebabs, remained a favored Super Bowl snack in the 1970s. Bite-sized chunks of ham, threaded onto skewers with pineapple pieces, gave an appealing sweet and salty contrast. Occasionally, bell peppers, onions, and cherry tomatoes were also added for color. These kebabs were often brushed with a simple glaze, perhaps a mixture of pineapple juice, soy sauce, and brown sugar, before being placed under the broiler or on a small indoor grill. Because of their bite-sized format, pineapple and ham skewers were perfect for snacking during intense game moments. They also embraced a certain exotic flair at a time when Hawaiian dishes were considered bold statements in Middle America. Hosts who cared about technical details might experiment with pre-cooking the ham slightly to reduce the grease or patting the pineapple chunks dry to maximize caramelization under heat. Now, over time, these sweet and savory sticks lost ground to items like a buffalo wing or a pizza roll. Yet, for many who were around in the 70s, the unique pairing of tangy pineapple and salty ham, it stands out as a memorable treat. Not to mention, the vibrant skewers really livened up the party table, capturing that festive vibe the Super Bowl called for. Number 3, mock apple pie. Though it dates back further than the 1970s, mock apple pie, famously made using Ritz crackers instead of apples, had a notable presence at Super Bowl parties during that decade. The recipe involved layering crushed crackers with sugar, lemon, and a blend of cinnamon and nutmeg to mimic the taste and texture of apples. Perhaps it was the novelty that fueled its popularity, but diners would bite into a slice only to discover that apple filling was really crackers. The science behind the culinary trick is how the crackers absorb the spiced syrup and take on a slightly firm, fruit-like texture. Once baked, the top crust seals the deal, making it visually indistinguishable from an authentic apple pie. Some home cooks top their version with whipped cream or even a slice of cheddar cheese, an old-fashioned tradition pairing sweet pies with cheese. During the 1970s, processed pantry staples were admired for their convenience, which could be a reason that so many people tried this at least once. As fresh produce became more affordable and year-round availability increased, the appeal of a cracker-based substitute kind of diminished. Still, for that generation, the memory of surprising friends at a potluck or Super Bowl watch party by revealing the secret behind the pie never fails to elicit grins. Number 2, Vienna sausages in barbecue sauce. Vienna sausages, those stubby canned links known for their soft texture, were a party mainstay for families looking to stretch a dollar and feed a crowd in the 1970s. One of the simplest and strangely most addictive preparations involved smothering them in barbecue sauce. Sometimes a dab of mustard or a splash of cola found its way into the sauce to boost flavor. The sausages would bubble away in a small saucepan or slow cooker until they soaked up the sweet and tangy essence. Technically, Vienna sausages are an American adaptation of a European product, formed from finely ground meats and packaged in small cans. Their convenience factor was huge. No prep, no refrigeration, just open and then a little minimal cooking. For a Super Bowl party, you just pop open a couple of cans, drain the sausages, put them in the sauce, and let the heat do the rest. Guests would spear them with toothpicks while standing around the TV, discussing which commercials were a hit or a miss. Then their popularity declined as more fresh and less processed options gained traction. Yet for many, that slightly spongy bite, dripping with barbecue sauce, it remains a potent reminder of childhood gatherings. Plus, just seeing a can of Vienna sausages still triggers an instant wave of nostalgia for those who recall how often they popped up on the snack table back in the day. And number 1, Green Goddess Dip. A bright green, herb-driven creation, Green Goddess Dip, derived from the classic Green Goddess dressing, originally attributed to the Palace Hotel in San Francisco in the 1920s. However, this tangy, creamy blend of mayonnaise, sour cream, or yogurt, tarragon, chives, parsley, and anchovy paste found new life in the 70s as a popular dip. The hue alone added a dash of spectacle to the snack spread. During a decade that embraced bold colors, from your shag carpet to your avocado green appliances, this dip fit right in. The standard recipe called for blending herbs and anchovy paste into the mayonnaise base with a bit of garlic and lemon juice. Some folks customized the ratio to their tastes, heavier on herbs for a fresh punch, maybe heavier on the mayo for a more subdued flavor. Because of the fresh parsley and tarragon, it was often considered relatively sophisticated compared to the jarred dips or powdered mix packets that dominated the store shelves. Over time, simpler ranch-style dips overshadowed Green Goddess, partly due to their milder taste and easy availability in pre-made bottles. By the late 80s, that signature green color, it wasn't turning as many heads, and the dip quietly drifted out of the mainstream. But nonetheless, it remains a testament to the adventurous spirit of 1970s parties, where the tables were as colorful as the decade's fashion choices. Hey, jokes aside, it's fascinating how party foods evolve with each passing decade. From gooey fondue to neon-colored Jell-O molds, these blasts from the past remind us of a time when convenience, creativity, and community all come together in front of a flickering TV screen. We hope you found this video helpful, and if you're feeling inspired, maybe give one of these retro recipes a try at your next Super Bowl gathering for old time's sake, or just any old party. Hey, don't forget to subscribe so you don't ever miss out on our deep dives into nostalgic trends and trustworthy party tips. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you soon.